Hello, Mr. Similis. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. We are very honored to have you here in our podcast. And first of all, may I kindly request you to briefly introduce yourself and provide us with some information about your background, especially in the field of laboratory accreditation?
Okay, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me as well to interact with colleagues over frontiers. So just briefing my background. I'm a chemist. I have a PhD in chemistry. I have been working for 33 years on quality issues, starting with standardization, then to certification, and for the last 20 years of my service in accreditation. As we established the Cyprus Accreditation Organization, where I had been lead assessor and trainer for laboratories and inspection bodies. I had the opportunity to join European accreditation activities, and the last 5 years of my service, I was the director of the organization. In parallel, and for 24 years, I am actively involved in Eurochem activities, representing the Cyprus committee coming under Eurochem. So this is how I had the chance to visit Tehran in 2009. It was a pleasure for me to interact with Iranian colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. As we have already talked, today we are going to talk about risk and risk-based thinking and risk approach, as it has been emphasized in the latest version of ISO 17025. My first question is to let us know your idea that do you agree that risk-based approach and the risk-based thinking has been the main change from the previous version of ISO 17025 standard compared with this version? I mean that we can see this risk approach implicitly or explicitly in different parts of the standard.
Okay.
Could you please let me know your idea about it?
Okay. You are right. This is the main change, at least regarding the philosophy of the standard. There are other changes referring to sampling, and that uncertainty arising from sampling has to be considered. Also on metrological traceability, decision rule, two options for management. But the philosophy of the standard is changed by the introduction of this risk-based approach. And this comes under various parts, various clauses, various aspects covered by the standard. And if I was to make a comparison with the case of medical laboratories, those colleagues who have some experience from this field may realize that, okay, risk is also mentioned in the ISO 15189, which applies in medical laboratories, but in a different way. In that case, reference is made to risk management for activities which may affect the results. Here we have an integral introduction of this thinking, and which brings a change in laboratories. Possibly it seems to be of some difficulty in the beginning when adjustment is necessary, and this is supposed to have already been completed after the 3-year transition period, which had been extended due to the difficult health conditions existing. But as time passes, laboratories will find that the flexibility the whole standard ensures, and this magic key, let's say, risk consideration will make their life more easy.
Thank you very much for your comments. You mentioned that it's something philosophical. This change is philosophical, and it is not only limited to the risk that might affect the quality and validity of the laboratory results. It's something integral, and every aspect of the management system should be affected by this risk-based thinking. Imagine a laboratory, because in the previous version of standard, we used to have a more prescriptive approach. In internal audits requirement, for example, it said that the laboratory should perform internal audits which covers all the elements of the management system. But in the new version of the standard, it is not mandatory anymore. It means that you see in which areas you have more risks, and you may focus the efforts of your internal audit on that area. The laboratories have more freedom now. Do you agree with me?
Yes, and I understand, it's not only me, that this change reflects the experience gained throughout these 2-3 decades of the implementation of previous versions of the accreditation standard, starting from the initially Guide 25. In the beginning, laboratories needed to be very careful and not having any basis how to do things. The then standards provided the basis, provided, let's say, a checklist for what they have to be done. As time passed, both laboratories and accreditation bodies gained much more experience through the training they had and also the interaction during assessments. And all these were discussed in regional accreditation networks like European Cooperation for Accreditation or APLAC or all other regional networks, and also at the ILAC level. Now, going back to the to whatever you correctly mentioned about the flexibility provided, let's say, in the clause referring to internal audits. It's upon the laboratory to decide even the frequency and the criteria to internally audit various aspects of its operation, of its system. In any case, following the guidelines provided by ISO 19011, which is quite important. But it's not as easy as one could consider that, okay, out of these 15 elements in our operation, okay, I escape from these 8 or 10 and I am focusing only on these 5. For what doing on deciding not to do something, you have to justify the decision. And this is to be assessed for the validity and the correctness by the assessor. To this end, the work of assessment is now more difficult because each laboratory, it's a different entity. It has its, let's say, personality. So the assessor needs to dig a little more than before in the system, the policies, the considerations made by the laboratory, and realize whether these are adequately justified.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. You mentioned about the importance of understanding at the regional level and the international level, especially between the assessors and how the assessments should be performed. Especially this, you also said that this freedom is not unconditional. It's a kind of conditional freedom, and you have to justify every decision that you have made to ensure your assessor and your other interested parties that the requirements of the system is implemented effectively. But imagine for small laboratories, very small laboratories, now they have more freedom. They no longer require to have a quality manager. One person can perform everything in this lab, and based on this risk approach in the new version of the standards, the laboratory has more freedom, especially small ones. But the assessor's jobs are much more difficult compared with before, because they need to be calibrated. Between each other, and in one assessment, one assessor goes there and says that okay, everything is perfect. You are a small laboratory, no need to do every detail. And the next time another assessor has different point of view, it would be very bad. This understanding, I would really like to have your comments about this understanding. How should we have this understanding between at regional and international levels?
For sure, the whole system for the accreditation and the globally recognized outcome of accreditation, which is one of the main tasks of its existence, because it facilitates the trade and all over the world. Also, the health and safety aspects within each society and so on. It was for many years a main aspect of the consultation between within regional accreditation bodies. If a Cyprus product is to be exported to Iran, accompanied by a certificate by an accredited lab, concluding that the results are within complying with the requirements, the Iranian person who is to receive the product need to be to have confidence in that the Cyprus accreditation body operates in compliance with internationally applicable rules, and these are included in ISO IEC 17011, governing the operation and competence of accreditation bodies. In the case of a small laboratory, for many years there was a discussion: is it possible for a small laboratory to be accredited? Some people had some reservations, saying that, but not just a single person may cover all needs. And what about internal audit? There is an answer. In this case, the lab may hire services from a third part, an outsider, to ensure this task is met. So the small laboratory with a centralized way of operating, this single person knows everything, or supposes to know everything about what is happening in the lab, has some more flexibility, but not less responsibilities in the framework already referred to, namely to indicate which are the risks in the basic elements. And we could refer, let's say, basic elements could be those with specific reference to them in relevant clauses, like impartiality. Is this single person laboratory impartial? Is it so small that there could be some not very strict policies regarding in order to ensure customers, the existence of customers? Is it laboratory, either a small one or a big one, operating under a parent organization? Is this parent organization the only customer of the lab, or the lab provides services to competitors of the parent organization. And if we move from the small lab, going to bigger ones, what about the policy, the wages policy? Are these wages adequate for the work performed by the staff? Or this staff could easily be vulnerable to challenges. And here we have the culture in a society. So there are a number of aspects which have to be considered by the small laboratory, but by all laboratories as well. And these are to be also assessed by the assessor. When dealing with the standard, and there are, as I mentioned, 5 clauses, 4 or 5 clauses: impartiality, the statement of conformity, management reviews, and the management of non-conforming work, where specific reference is made for risk-based thinking. But the word risk is mentioned 30 times in this standard. In the previous standard,
you mean 30?
30, yes.
Okay.
In the previous standard, we had just 4 times without this whole approach. And on the other hand, there are some words which have to be kept in mind by the laboratory, and which represent some hints for risks to be considered. In some clauses, there is the word sufficient, to ensure sufficient blah blah, or suitable. The question is what I am doing suitable? Is what I'm doing sufficient? Or in other cases, there is prevent this or the other, or ensure, or even critical. So although I understand and I expect that laboratories have already been transferred to the new standard requirements, with some more time and experience gained, they will for sure feel this flexibility, and also that it's more easy and less bureaucratic, because the prescriptive way requirements used to be written in the previous version is not anymore here.
Okay, in order to conclude about what you just described to us, that the first point that was interesting for me is the flexibility based on the scale of the laboratory. In small labs, the flexibility level would be completely different from large labs, or depending if the laboratory is an independent or is a part of a parent and bigger organization. The second point, which was very interesting for me, is that some words like sufficient or suitable, by their own nature, by the level of sufficiency or level of suitability themselves, have the risk nature inside.
Yes.
Am I right that in order to be suitable, you might not reach that, and you need to consider the risk in order to become sufficient or suitable? Okay, thank you very much.
It's not a matter to give an answer, yes, it's suitable, just to the question, is it suitable? But to show me is what the assessor will say. Show me how you reached this conclusion.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Then my next question is that I have worked with several accreditation bodies, and sometimes I notice that they have some policies and sometimes they have their own requirements in different areas, such as have some rules about the intervals of participation in proficiency testing. Or in Iran, our national accreditation system has some requirements about how to prove the confidentiality arrangements, and they need some legal documents in order to be sure. Are these kind of, do you agree that these kind of requirements might be in conflict with this risk-based thinking, or no, they are free to, in some areas, to have more rigid requirements out of the requirements of ISO 17025?
You are right, especially when referring to these participation in PT proficiency testing schemes was a point for discussions for some years. Newly established accreditation bodies used to draft some text of compulsory implementation by the labs to participate every year, let's say, in all in PT schemes for all parameters. In parallel, in the field of medical labs, due to the increased needs and the significance of their work, the frequency was much higher. This was related to the first years in the life of accreditation in each country. And I referred to this earlier in a more general way when dealing with how more detailed the standards used to be in the previous years, and how we go on with more flexibility. The frequency of participation in PT schemes is a responsibility of the laboratory to be decided. And this was indeed the case even before the new standard came up. And there are some publications of EURAChem and also from European Cooperation for Accreditation indicating and supporting laboratories how, let's say, to group parameters and techniques used in order to ensure that there is no overdoing, a costly overdoing participation. And this does not refer only to the economic point of view, but this is unnecessary if the laboratory documents how they reached a conclusion, a decision, how often they are participating in PT schemes. In the medical field, this is mostly set by the organizers of the PT schemes, bearing in mind the differences and, as I mentioned, the significance of the results and the way how the everything is provided by the supplier, the equipment, the kits, the controls, the reagents. So even if you go on with frequent internal control, you may have a bias because something is going wrong with the software of the equipment or the reagents for them. For this reason, you have to go more frequently with PT schemes. But in the analytical laboratories and microbiological laboratories, and even those testing mechanical property parameters in construction materials, one could say indicatively that once per each accreditation cycle to have all parameters addressed. However, if in instrumental analysis you can, and if we are testing for heavy metals, with atomic absorption, let's say. There is no need to go on with every heavy metal, but justify which are the ones and at which level, bearing in mind the upper limits accepted by legislation and so on. All these have to be taken into consideration. Now, regarding the confidentiality, which is interrelated with impartiality as well, okay, one has, there are some, this has to be reviewed every year, one could say, whether some changes have been made, if anything wrong happened in the lab, or even without such an incident, that no external factors have, which may affect the whole work, may have changed.
Okay. I think the term subdiscipline they use for this grouping of analytes, and am I right? They use the term subdiscipline, that you need to participate in
Yes.
different
This is,
subjects.
I think it's EA 418, I think.
Okay. My next question is that in class 8.5 of ISO 17025 standard, it clearly says in one of the notes that by this requirement, we don't need the laboratories to have an official risk management systems. And some laboratories, again, I say small ones, believe that they can fulfill the requirements of class 8.5 by considering and assigning some time in their annual management review to talk about the risks, to talk about how they should face these risks and what should be done, and record the required actions. And by that time, as part of the management review, they believe that they can fulfill the requirements of class 8.5. Do you agree with such a conclusion, or they need more documents or a procedure for dealing with risk?
Okay, I would say that this is not sufficient. The message given by European accreditation, cooperation for accreditation in the first training of lead assessors was that you are not, the assessors are not supposed to find everything being addressed from the first time. So you are quite correct. There is a note in clause 8.5 indicating that, let's say, we don't need to go on with ISO 31000, which is for risk management and so on. But I would say from my experience that it will be very useful for laboratories to have a look at this standard and be familiarized with some approaches, terminologies, and so on. And this will help them not fulfilling these requirements. It's a, let's say, a useful supporting document to start indicating some areas, mainly the ones addressed in relevant clauses, as we already mentioned, and don't necessarily feel that they have to have full marks, let's say, in this exercise. To try enlighten the risks, put some approaches and practices, take records, maintain records, have a report to be discussed in the management review. And in this management review, after 1 year of having this in place, an evaluation of the experience gained will be made. It's possible that some additional points will be taken on board, and some of those who had already been considered may be evaluated that it's not necessary anymore to be given such an attention. It's a dynamic approach. We have to build on this as time passes, but also to make best use of the experience we already have in the lab. Anyway, this was the case in the past. Let's say accreditation bodies, when visiting labs for surveillance visit, they could deviate from the yearly frequency based on the notes, the outcomes, the reports of the previous visits. So the idea is to ensure flexibility, to be focused on the efficiency of the result, and not in a prescriptive way how to reach the result. This is not written in the standard anymore. It's upon the lab to find its way, to be consistently followed, adequately documented, with appropriate records being kept for their internal audit and management reviews consideration, and also for assessment by the accreditation body.
You mean that we know it's not interesting anymore to know how they fulfill these requirements. We need the outputs if they can prove and show that the risks are evaluated and managed effectively within the laboratory, and the results show that they effectively control the risk. It is sufficient, no matter if they have a separate risk assessment procedure or it has been done as part of management review. Am I right?
Okay. Yes. They cannot ensure a sufficient result just by chance. This is based on their work in a system not anymore necessarily appearing in a quality manual, but take care. Those who have already put effort and time and money to ensure a quality manual, if it serves the purpose, it's okay. Don't dispose it. Anyway, whatever was included or was supposed to be included in a quality manual is anyway somewhere in the system, in not such a prescriptive way, but having the same potential to ensure the task.
Okay. My next question is about the impartiality. I think is one of the most important areas in which we need to identify risk, and I think it's the only requirement in which the standard clearly says that you need to do something for that risk. You need to minimize or eliminate the risk of impartialities. It means that you cannot say that, okay, I have some risks that affect my impartiality and I prefer to live with that and do nothing about it. Recently, we had an assessment, and the assessor made a very good point that standard not only require you to identify and minimize or eliminate the risk of impartiality, but you need to evaluate this risk on an ongoing basis. It is as part of, it means that for risk of impartiality, you need to have some indicators or have some continuous mechanisms to continuously check if the risk is in an acceptable level. Could you please provide us with your idea about this impartiality risk?
I think I have already mentioned the need to annually, continuously evaluate this. For sure, some factors may not be changed. If a laboratory operates under a parent organization, this is as it is. The task is to ensure that there is no intervention, let's say, by the parent organization, even if it is the only customer in the results which are the results referring to it, or in case competitors are there, competitors of the parent organization are also customers of the laboratory. Now, the way to ensure that staff is kept impartial is to have a good relations in the atmosphere in the lab, to be friendly, to have good the people to be adequately paid, their salaries to be realistic, and then to provide opportunities to staff for new challenges and more active involvement in the whole work, which is supposed to be a group work, to avoid, let's say, competition, which okay, is between the staff. In some cases, this is the result of bad management of human resources. And okay, it's a matter of culture as well, but this have to be taken into consideration. For sure, a laboratory is not something isolated from the society. So some characteristics in our behavior, positive and negative,
Come from our
may
society.
exist in a small community that is the 3 or 5 or 50 members of the staff of the lab.
Okay. My last question is that some laboratories identify most of the risks in the area that technical areas that might affect the validity of test results. Recently, in many labs, I have noticed that they identify risks related to this pandemic situation, or how this situation might affect the functionality of the laboratories. I would like to have your idea about in which areas that laboratories can identify risks, or it is a matter that depends on the field of activity of the laboratories. If a laboratory is active in the food testing, the risks are completely different in nature. By industrial laboratory works as a part of a factory producing industrial equipment or industrial products. Can I have your idea about this?
Okay, the specific activity in any field is of decisive importance, and we may have different situation in microbiological laboratories compared with analytical ones, because in microbiological laboratories sampling is of even more sampling risk in sampling is of higher importance than, let's say, in many analytical laboratories. Also, we may have in sampling, we may have more risks when referring to laboratories testing building materials. But even in similar scopes of two labs, we may have a different extent of risks and in different aspects if we compare the two of them, due to the whole structure of the laboratory. If, let's say, one laboratory has 5 qualified analysts and the other has only 1 or 2, the participation in PT schemes may take into consideration this difference, and the lab needs to ensure that all these 5 analysts have continuously maintained on continuous basis their competence, and one of the aspects is how they perform in a PT scheme. If you have only 2 or only 1, then the risk is when you try to employ another one, how to ensure that after appropriate training, this guy can be authorized to carry out by himself, herself, the test, providing that she has participated in PT schemes. Now, the field itself is the decisive factor, also the size, and also the whole structure of each laboratory may affect, it's a matrix of aspects which have to be considered individually for by each laboratory, and when the assessor from the accreditation body comes, in particular, each particular case needs to be addressed as appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no more questions. Is there anything that you would like to add to our discussion?
Yeah, okay. I would like to mention that this is, I had it in mind, but we had no time previously to mention it. How we decide that there is a risk. There is a publication by Eurolab providing under cookbook in Eurolab website, where there is a diagram. The x-axis is the possibility of a risk to occur, and the y-axis is the impact, the expected impact. Mm-hmm. And then you have, starting from the very low possibility and the very low impact, if this is the case, to put on the diagram these points, let's say, and out of this you can decide which are the cases with high possibility and high impact. These have to be considered as a priority. Mm-hmm. So when we are referring earlier to gradually going on, a laboratory needs to do something like this. For sure, this diagram may be different in 2 or 3 years' time, because a further understanding of the philosophy is ensured with regard to possibilities and impacts and so on. And also, due to policies and practices, this may have been changed. The other issue is that these possibilities may come from the experience regarding earlier non-conformities and earlier cases where preventive actions were necessary to be taken. Now, no more preventive actions are referred to in the standard, because the risk-based approach makes them unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, this risk-based thinking is related with opportunities, and opportunities is further related to continuous improvement. The other thing that one could add is SWOT analysis for the laboratory to realize, because things are not static, the fields of activity and services provided may be extended as time passes, and the market needs more and more. So we need to consider strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And this also makes easier how to consider risks and opportunities.
Yes, I was going to add this, but you yourself mentioned that without having a good image of your internal and external environment, you cannot identify your risks, and based on the changes in these internal and external factors, the risk level might change on a continuous basis. I mean that a high risk in the past might not be an important risk in the future. That's depending on the internal and external situation.
You earlier mentioned something about this very difficult COVID-19 months. Medical laboratories had been, many of them had been in all countries accredited against ISO 15189. The unfortunate challenge to meet the needs for testing for COVID gave an opportunity for them to expand their job in a quality-based way. This was not an easy task, and in some countries, results were not very clear or correct in many cases, and this had consequences and so on. Further to such an unfortunate results, you may consider that a new legislation in a country may increase the needs of the market to have laboratory services provided. And the laboratories who are following either by SWOT analysis or just through evaluating opportunities have to be aware of changes and trends in the legislation of their country or in the region, or with countries with which they have commercial trade relations, to be in position to meet the additional requirements. And there, again, risk will be taken on board.
Okay, thank you very much, Kyriakos, for your time. It has been an honor for me.
I add something. COVID made assessments very difficult, or even affected them decisively. There is a trend for remotely assessing laboratories, and here we all need, both laboratories and the accreditation bodies, to consider risk.
Yes, because by remote assessments, you might not have sufficient information, or you are limited in some areas, like observing the test and observing the laboratory environmental conditions, and it might arise some risk in order to fulfill the assessment objectives. Yes, it's very interesting for me. Thank you very much for this nice discussion. It has been an honor for me. I used to sit during the workshops and conferences and listen to your presentations, but here technology helped us to have this discussion with you. I hope that this situation will be over very soon, and I will meet you in person. I should really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It was the first opportunity of this kind for me. Although we spend a lot of time every day in web meetings and so on, this interaction was very challenging for me, and I thank you for the honor made to me and the invitation. And I hope that this our interaction could be of some help to our colleagues, to whom we have to transfer whatever we had the opportunity to learn throughout the recent experiences.
It has been a very compact training course for me. It was, and I'm sure that for our audience, it will be very helpful. I should thank you again and hope to see you again. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.